What did you just hear? Most of you would say a bell, but that's only half the truth. You heard a sound, yes, but you also heard what came after. The silence, the space where the ringing faded into nothing. My name is Adrian Vale. I'm 58 years old, and I've spent the better part of my life traveling. Not just through countries and cities, but through ideas, through philosophies, through the quiet spaces between thoughts. And I've learned something that our modern world seems desperate to forget. That silence is not the absence of meaning. It's the canvas upon which meaning is painted. Today, I want to talk to you about music. Not the music you stream on your devices or hear in concert halls, but the music of existence itself. The rhythm of life and death, action and rest, sound and silence. Because somewhere along the way, we've become terrified of the pauses. We've convinced ourselves that only the notes matter, that only the doing, the achieving, the producing, the speaking has value. But here's what I've discovered in my decades of wandering and wondering. The pause between notes isn't the absence of music. It's part of the music itself. And the moments you call nothing, the rest, the sleep, the stillness, even death, these aren't interruptions of life. They're essential movements in life's symphony. Can you hear it? That space after the sound? That's where we're going today. Into the pause, into the silence, into the parts of existence we've learned to fear, and learning perhaps not to fear them anymore. We live in a world obsessed with yang. You know the symbol, the yin-yang, that ancient Taoist image of black and white dancing together in perfect balance. Yang is the white, the active, the bright, the loud, the productive. Yin is the black, the receptive, the dark, the quiet, the restful. And while the philosophy tells us these forces are equal and interdependent, our culture has chosen a favorite. We worship Yang. We've built entire civilizations around it. Think about the language we use. We tell people to seize the day, to make things happen, to hustle, to grind, to never stop, never quit, never rest. We've turned productivity into a virtue and stillness into a vice. We call people lazy if they rest, unmotivated if they pause, wasting time if they simply sit and think. Or worse, sit and don't think. I was in Tokyo 2 years ago and I watched salarymen sleeping on the subway, utterly exhausted from their 14-hour workdays. But here's the thing, they felt guilty about it. Guilty about needing sleep, guilty about being human. That's how deep this obsession runs. We've created a world where silence is uncomfortable. Have you noticed this? Sit in a room with strangers and watch how quickly someone feels compelled to fill the quiet with words. Any words, meaningful or not. We've invented devices that ensure we never have to experience a single moment of silence or boredom. We fill every gap, every pause, every empty space with noise, with content, with stimulation. But here's what we've forgotten. You cannot have music without silence. You cannot have rhythm without rest. You cannot have meaning without space. When I was younger, much younger, in my 20s, I believed the same thing. I thought life was about filling every moment with experience, with achievement, with something. I traveled constantly, not to discover, but to consume. I read voraciously, not to understand, but to accumulate knowledge. I talked endlessly, not to communicate, but to avoid the discomfort of quiet. And I was miserable, exhausted, burned out in a way that no amount of vacation could fix, because even my vacations were just more yang, more doing, more seeing, more experiencing. It wasn't until I found myself in a monastery in northern India, quite by accident actually, I'd gotten lost hiking, that I encountered a different way. The monks there didn't just tolerate silence, they cultivated it. They protected it like a precious resource, and when they did speak or act, those actions had weight, had meaning, because they emerged from stillness rather than from the frantic energy of constant doing. One monk told me something I've never forgotten. He said, "The river doesn't try to flow. It flows because there is space for it to flow into." Your life is the same. If you fill every moment, there is no space for life to move through you. Let me tell you about music. Real music, I mean the technical side of it. I'm not a musician myself, not in any formal sense, but I've spent time with many musicians over the years, and they've taught me something profound. In musical notation, there are symbols for notes, the sounds you make. But there are also symbols for rests, the silences you keep. And these rests aren't optional. They're not just gaps where the musician catches their breath. They're integral to the composition. A rest is a note of silence. It has duration, it has timing, it has purpose. Remove the rests from a piece of music, and you don't have more music. You have chaos. You have noise. The composer Claude Debussy once said, "Music is the space between the notes." Not the notes themselves, the space between them. The silence gives the sound its shape, its meaning, its beauty. Think about your favorite song. Really think about it. What makes it moving? What gives it power? Yes, the melody, the harmony, the rhythm, but also the pauses. The moment before the chorus hits, the breath between verses, the silence that makes you lean forward, waiting, anticipating. Without those pauses, that song would be unbearable. It would be an assault. It would mean nothing. Now apply this to life. Your life is a composition. Every action, every word, every achievement, these are notes. But the pauses, the sleep, the rest, the moments of doing nothing, the times of waiting, even the experience of loss and grief, these are also part of the composition. They're not mistakes. They're not failures. They're not empty spaces that need to be filled. They're rests. They're the silence that gives your actions meaning. I remember sitting with a friend, a concert pianist, after her performance one evening. I told her how moved I was by her playing, and she smiled and said something that struck me. She said, "You know what the hardest thing to learn was? Not how to play the notes, how to play the silences, how to wait, how to let the pause be as full as the sound." She explained that young musicians often rush through rests, uncomfortable with the silence, eager to get to the next note. But mature musicians understand that the rest is where the music breathes. It's where the audience breathes. It's where meaning settles in. The same is true of life. Young souls rush from experience to experience, terrified of gaps, of pauses, of moments where nothing is happening. But mature souls understand that these gaps aren't empty. They're full of integration, of processing, of becoming. When you sleep, you're not wasting time. Your brain is consolidating memories, solving problems, healing. When you rest, you're not being lazy. You're allowing your body and mind to restore themselves. When you sit in silence, you're not doing nothing. You're creating space for insight, for creativity, for the quiet voice of wisdom that can't be heard over the noise of constant activity. And yes, even death, even that ultimate pause. It's not the opposite of life, it's part of life's rhythm, the final rest in the composition, the silence that gives all the preceding notes their poignancy, their preciousness, their meaning. But we're afraid, aren't we? We're terrified of these pauses. Why? Why have we become so uncomfortable with stillness, with silence, with rest? I think it's because we've confused activity with existence. We've started to believe that if we're not doing something, we're not anything. That our value is measured by our productivity. That our worth is calculated by our output. This is a modern sickness, but it has ancient roots. The philosopher Blaise Pascal wrote in the 17th century that all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He understood even then that we flee from silence because in silence we have to face ourselves. We have to confront the questions we've been avoiding. We have to feel the feelings we've been numbing. Silence is honest. It doesn't let us hide. In our world of constant stimulation, we've perfected the art of distraction. We've created infinite ways to avoid ever being alone with our thoughts. Scroll through your phone, turn on the television, put in your earbuds. Fill every moment with something, anything, to avoid the discomfort of nothing. But here's what I've learned. That discomfort is the doorway. The things we avoid are usually the things we most need to face. I spent 6 months in a cabin in northern Norway a few years ago. It was winter, the polar night, when the sun doesn't rise for months. And it was quiet, profoundly, almost unbearably quiet. For the first few weeks, I was restless, anxious, constantly looking for something to do, something to occupy my mind. But gradually something shifted. The silence stopped feeling like an absence and started feeling like a presence. Not an empty void, but a full space. And in that space, things began to emerge. Thoughts I'd been too busy to think. Feelings I'd been too distracted to feel. Insights that could only come in stillness. I realized that I'd been afraid of silence because I'd been afraid of myself, afraid of what I might discover if I stopped running, afraid that without all my activities and achievements and distractions, there might be nothing there. But the opposite was true. In the silence, I found more of myself, not less. In the pause, I discovered a depth I'd been skimming over for decades. This is what meditation teachers have been trying to tell us for millennia. This is what every contemplative tradition understands. The silence isn't empty. It's full. It's where the real work happens. It's where transformation occurs. But you have to be willing to enter it. You have to be willing to sit with the discomfort, to resist the urge to fill every gap, to trust that the pause has value even when it doesn't feel productive. And this applies to the larger pauses too, the ones we really fear: illness, loss, grief, failure, the times when life forces us to stop, whether we want to or not. We call these times dark, we call them empty. We say we're going through nothing. But are we? Or are these the rests in our composition, the silences that give shape to everything else? The pauses where we integrate, where we deepen, where we become more fully ourselves. I'm not romanticizing suffering. I'm not saying pain is pleasant or that loss is easy. But I am saying that these experiences aren't aberrations. They're not mistakes in the music. They're part of the music. And if we can learn to be present with them, to not rush through them or numb them or deny them, they have something to teach us. Let's talk about the pause we fear most. Death. In our culture, death is the ultimate failure. It's the thing we fight against with every medical intervention, every anti-aging cream, every desperate attempt to pretend we're not mortal. We've made death invisible, hidden it away in hospitals and nursing homes, sanitized it, refused to speak its name. But death isn't the opposite of life. It's the completion of life. It's the final rest that gives all the preceding notes their meaning. Think about it. If a piece of music never ended, if it just went on and on forever, would it be beautiful? No. It would be torture. It's the ending that makes the music meaningful. It's the fact that it concludes that makes each moment precious. The same is true of life. Your mortality isn't a flaw in the design. It's what makes your life matter. It's what makes this moment, right now, irreplaceable. If you had infinite time, nothing would be urgent, nothing would be precious, nothing would truly matter. The ancient Stoics understood this. They practiced memento mori, remember death, not to be morbid, but to be awake, to remember that this life is finite and therefore sacred, that these moments are numbered and therefore valuable. When I was 43, I had a health scare. It turned out to be nothing serious, but for a few weeks, I thought I might be dying. And something interesting happened. I didn't become depressed or terrified, well, not after the initial shock. Instead, I became more alive. Colors seemed brighter. Conversations seemed more meaningful. The ordinary moments of life, drinking coffee, watching the sunrise, talking with friends, became extraordinary. Why? Because I was aware of the pause. I was conscious of the ending. And that consciousness made the music sweeter. We spend so much energy trying to avoid death, trying to pretend it's not coming, trying to fill every moment so we don't have to think about it. But what if we did the opposite? What if we befriended death? What if we let the awareness of life's ending inform how we live? Not in a morbid way, but in a clarifying way. What would you do differently if you truly accepted that your time is limited? What would you stop doing? What would you start doing? What would you say? What would you let go of? The pause of death and the smaller pauses that prefigure it, like sleep, like rest, like the quiet moments between activities, these aren't enemies. They're teachers. They're reminders. They're the silence that makes the sound meaningful. So how do we live with this understanding? How do we embrace the pauses in a world that demands constant noise? It starts with listening, really listening, not just to sounds, but to silence, not just to words, but to the spaces between words, not just to what's happening, but to what's not happening. This is a practice. It's not something you do once and master. It's something you cultivate, slowly, over time. Start small, find moments in your day for silence. Not meditation necessarily, though that can help. Just silence. Turn off the music. Put away the phone. Sit. Listen. Let yourself be uncomfortable. Let yourself be bored. Don't fill the gap. And notice what emerges. Notice the thoughts that arise when you're not distracting yourself from them. Notice the feelings that surface when you're not numbing them. Notice the insights that come when you're not drowning them out with noise. Learn to rest without guilt. Sleep is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's part of the rhythm of life. Your body needs it. Your mind needs it. Your soul needs it. Stop treating it like an inconvenience or a weakness. Learn to do nothing without feeling like you're wasting time. Sit and watch the clouds, stare out the window. Let your mind wander. These aren't empty activities, they're how creativity happens. They're how insight emerges. They're how you integrate all the experiences you've been accumulating. Learn to be with loss, with grief, with the difficult pauses. Don't rush through them. Don't try to fix them or solve them or get past them as quickly as possible. Sit with them, let them be. They have something to teach you, but only if you're willing to listen. And learn to see death, your own eventual death, not as an enemy, but as a companion, as the thing that makes this life precious, as the silence that gives all your actions their weight and meaning. I'm 58 now. I'm closer to the end of my composition than to the beginning. And I can tell you honestly, I'm not afraid. Not because I'm brave, but because I've learned to hear the music differently. I've learned that the pauses are as beautiful as the notes, that the silence is as full as the sound, that the rest is as essential as the activity. Your life is a symphony. And yes, the notes matter, the things you do, the words you speak, the achievements you accomplish, the love you give. But the rests matter too, the sleep, the stillness, the quiet, the waiting, the grief, the loss, and yes, eventually, the death. These aren't interruptions of your music. They are your music. So don't be afraid of the pauses. Don't rush to fill every silence. Don't treat rest as a failure or stillness as a waste. Learn to listen to the whole composition, the sound and the silence, the yang and the yin, the notes and the rests. Because here's the truth, the pause between notes isn't the absence of music, it's part of the music itself, and the moments you call nothing, they're not nothing, they're the space in which everything happens. Listen, can you hear it? The silence after the sound. That's not emptiness, that's fullness, that's possibility. That's the space where the next note will emerge. Your life is like this bell. Sound and silence dancing together. Neither is more important than the other. Neither is more real than the other. They're partners in the same composition. So live fully. Act, create, speak, love, achieve. Yes, all of that. But also rest. Be still. Be quiet. Be present with the pauses. Let yourself experience the silence. Because in the end, it's not just the notes that make the music beautiful. It's the silence that lets you hear them.